Hey guys, it's Radar. How's it going? This is going to be a video on how to make a YouTube video or how I make my YouTube videos. Hopefully, if you're a content creator that's just getting started or you want some tips, this video will help you out. Again, obviously, I'm not a YouTube expert. I don't have a million subs, but I think I've learned some things along the way. And if you're curious, continue watching. This is the kind of content I want to be doing more on Patreon and that kind of thing. So if that's something you like, definitely consider signing up for that. I do want to do more of this. And if people like it, that's great for me to know. But anyway, the first step to making a video, whether it's like an opinion piece or a tutorial or whatever, is the kind of ideas and research and planning phase. So this is where like maybe I have an idea already, and then I need to do the necessary research to kind of understand what that would look like as a video. So let's pretend I'm making a tutorial for Fox's jab up smash. And when I realize that I want to make a video for that, the first thing I need to do is like figure out some specifics about the technique. And that would be done through research, like going to iNeedData, as in like ineeddata.com, and testing things myself in debug mode. So, maybe I start to go, hey, does this work against Jigglypuff? When does it work against fast fallers? When does it work against, a variety of different characters? And if you don't know how to use debug mode, definitely Google how to use debug mode. It's like a gecko code in Dolphin, or it can be through 20xx. That'll help you check out like frame data. It'll help you see hitboxes. You can kind of go frame by frame and see the action states. So it's a really useful resource. But basically, through doing this, you'll learn like what is important and isn't important. And that'll really give you kind of the resources and knowledge to start writing the script later down the road. Another thing is you also might notice like, hey, actually, jab leads into other combos, and maybe it's worth including that in the video as well, like jab back air or jab up air or whatever. And that's also something that you need to consider, like what is the scope of the video? As you're researching, this can kind of give you an idea of maybe the video shouldn't be just jab up smash, it should be jab follow-ups with Fox, just to use an example. One thing that people ask me sometimes is like, do you have trouble coming up with ideas? And I always tell them like, no, I have literally hundreds of ideas. So if you are struggling with ideas, I wouldn't say it's because you're not creative. I would say it's because you don't have knowledge, and it's the knowledge that's limiting you. What I mean by that is like, say for example, if you were really loved ice cream and you tried 100 different flavors of ice cream, and people said like, hey, do you have any ideas about content to do with ice cream? You'd probably be like, yeah, my top 10 flavors, the flavors that taste the best in this setting, like blah blah blah. But if you've only ever tried vanilla ice cream, well, yeah, you're probably gonna have trouble coming up with ideas. So same idea with this is, if you play Melee a lot, like you'll find all these situations where you're like, yeah, I can make a video about that, and then you can kind of research it. But if you don't have ideas or you don't have an idea of how to approach it, it's probably a knowledge gap and you need to close that gap. So once you have kind of the necessary research out of the way, that's where I start writing the script. And to me, the script is so important. And I know people don't like making scripts, but I think it's what distinguishes my content from a lot of other content. And like this video, like it's a bit more casual. Even still, I did script this out, but I'm trying to kind of make it more casual, like I said. Anyway, I approach scripts the same way I approach writing an essay. So if you're in school right now and you have an essay due in like a couple weeks and you're really bummed out about it, you might draw on those skills later or in your videos. And it is a really great way to learn how to organize your thoughts. One of the things that I think is super important in general is making an outline. This is something that, again, I think elevates your work. And even if you really don't want to do a script, I think you should still at least do an outline. So again, if we were making a jab up smash video, I might outline it like this, where what is the technique? What is it useful for? How do you perform the technique? What are some common challenges and misunderstandings? And are there good alternatives to the technique? And then a conclusion, along with maybe the limitations of the technique as well. And then under each heading, I would kind of cover that in the video. And that gives me an idea of like where each thought would be going. It's a really good planning tool. Once again, like I said, I would approach this in a scripted way. And so I'd have paragraphs under each, and then that would lead me into the third phase, which is the editing part of this. This is, to me, almost more important than the script because, again, it's taking your thoughts and really refining them. So editing is a very constant process. It's not just like, good, the script's edited and ready to go. You might find as you're further down the road that you need to edit stuff out. But the biggest skill that I don't hear people talk about that much with regards to editing is actually empathy and being able to put yourselves in the shoes of the viewer. So what do I mean by that? Well, say you're watching a jab up smash video and I'm making it. I would need to think like, what would someone who's relatively new want to understand or maybe would get confused by? Think about like, if they were watching this video, and they were new, like what would kind of turn them off? What would maybe make them click away? What would maybe really make them excited to keep watching? That's kind of what you want to be focusing it on. And if you are making an opinion piece, it's kind of the same stuff. Like, what is that person thinking while watching it? Are they going, yeah, I agree, but he really needs to cover this one point and he still hasn't? Well, maybe you should be editing it and pushing that point up further. But I'm constantly thinking, if I was watching this video or I was reading this article or whatever it is, would I be just sitting there being like, man, get on with it, man, or whatever? Like, that's what you really want to be considering. And the thing about this is this process will also help you structure the video. Like, as you answer questions like this, you might realize, oh, maybe we should be spending more time here and elaborating, and maybe we need less time in this area. And of course, you can only do the best you can, but I think it is really, really important to figure out, where things are confusing or what the audience is thinking. Another big part of editing is just refining areas that maybe you could really tighten up. So a really good example of that would be, say I make this jab up smash script and I open with jab up smash is an amazing technique and it's used by Fox players in several matchups. And look, here's this thing of Leffen doing it, and man, Mango's used it so many times and blah, blah, blah. And I go on and on about why it's good. And it turns out I've taken 30 seconds to explain why jab up smash is good. And I look at the script and I go, I don't think I need this. And maybe I cut it down to something like, we all know how powerful jab up smash is versus floaties and fast fallers, but where is the technique useful and how do we perform it? And there in like 2 sentences, I covered what I was covering before. And the reason I'm bringing this up is this is the kind of stuff where or sometimes it feels like it's really important to give context in a certain area or to spend some time speaking about stuff, but you really need to think like, does this need to be here? For every paragraph, for every thought, should this be in here? And if the answer is maybe, or the answer is, I don't know, cut it. Like, just take it out. It's probably not adding a lot, and really try to make the video shorter. Oh, the other thing that you'll notice with the example that I gave, and I'll hopefully have it on screen right now, is that I also lay out the arguments that I'm going to be doing, again, kind of essay format for the video, even if it's a tutorial. Like, obviously for video essays, it makes more sense. But if I'm saying like, hey guys, here's the technique, how do you do the technique? Like, we're going to cover this stuff. It gives people right from the start an idea of what they're going to get from the video. With regards to length and stuff, just generally, it's funny because sometimes people will say things like, oh, he deliberately made the video 10 minutes or 8 minutes just so he could get that YouTube money. And I can honestly say, like, I have never done this, but it might be still a valid criticism because there's always going to be things where it's like, in hindsight, maybe I could have cut this down a bit. Maybe I could have made that a bit shorter. So really try to tighten up your writing. This is a great exercise to just constantly be looking at the video and thinking, what can I cut down? What should I expand upon, etc. Editing is very important. There's so many times where I have an order of the video and then the video becomes completely different farther down the road. After that, you have the recording phase, which may or may not be with the camera. I generally don't do it with a camera, but obviously we have one now. My videos always feature a voiceover, and I usually record that prior to making any visuals. So that kind of gives me an idea of here's the structure of the video. I have the script. Now I have the recording. What do I put on top of that? That being said, I do still think of visual stuff later, and we'll get into that. It's completely normal when you're first starting out, and even at this point, to kind of stumble over words, get tongue-tied. And so all I can say is just, take your time. These are skills that will actually be valuable in other areas of life. I draw on them when I'm commentating. If I'm public speaking, it's really nice to be used to trying to say things in an eloquent way or not stumble over my words. But of course, like in this video, there's been times where I've been like, so, it happens. I've reset this video a couple times to shorten it. I might not even keep this take. But yeah, definitely practice that. When you read things aloud, by the way, as for the editing, you'll get an idea of whether or not they kind of make sense in your head. This is a good technique for writing essays too. And when you record them, you might realize oh crap, I need to rewrite or re-edit some stuff. So it's another big part of the process for me. Next up, we have the visuals and video editing step. So the script is finished and I've recorded all the words, and now I need to make visuals. Sometimes the visuals are pretty obvious. This is actually, to me, probably the hardest part. If you're making a jab up smash tutorial, you probably want clips of players doing jab up smash, and you want clips of maybe yourself showing the technique. Maybe you want clips from debug mode or whatever. But usually I have the visuals in mind. Sometimes they don't work out, sometimes they do, but try to plan ahead for what you need and kind of write with some visuals in mind, but you can always kind of fill things in later. Another visual thing that I think is really important is to kind of establish a bit of a style or brand through the colors and font choices and things like that you use. You don't need to be like a design expert, but say for example, if every video you're like changing the fonts that you're using, and it's not like it's not something that you're doing consciously. Like lately, I've been kind of experimenting with fonts to find a better style. But you know, if you look at my micro melee videos, I'm using pretty consistent fonts, pretty consistent colors. That makes people go, oh, look, it's another micro melee video rather than just kind of random stuff. So just be mindful of that. It's something that really does go a long way. Like pick a couple fonts that you like. There's lots of free fonts available through Google Fonts, and pick a couple colors you like and draw on those a lot. Next up, we have the kind of gear section. I think people too often in creative work focus on the gear that they have. There's a term called GAS, which is gear acquisition syndrome, which is when you're obsessing over like, I got to get a new microphone so I can sound even better. I got to get a new camera. I know myself, I want a new camera. That's why I don't generally do videos with my face. But usually in a lot of cases, better writing, better editing, you know, just tighter skill generally is going to get you a lot more value than upgrading your equipment. That being said, there is still some stuff that I would say is sort of mandatory for making videos. Probably the most important for me is a solid microphone. Despite what you might think, bad sound is actually more impactful than a bad video. So for example, like I don't look perfect here. Obviously I have like pretty good production value, but even if I had, you know, really, really low quality, which I'll show you guys right now, I'm going to edit this. So this is a clip where I only have that little floodlight in the back. And you can see obviously the image quality is a lot noisier, but the microphone sound is still decent. Whereas if I had audio that sounded like this, you know, you're probably going to immediately go, I got to turn this video off. So again, this is just a clip. Here's what it looks like with bad lighting, which I'm going to cover in a sec. And here's what it looks like with good lighting. Again, the same camera. So yeah, bad sound, very important. Probably the first thing I would invest in. You don't have to spend a ton of money. There's a couple microphones I recommend. One is the FIFINE, whatever the word is, microphone. It's a USB condenser mic. It's like, I think like $45 US. I think it's like $60 Canadian. And then the other mic I'd recommend is the Samson Q2U, which is SAMSON. Again, I'll have these in the link in the description. Both of these are fairly affordable mics. One is a dynamic mic, one is a condenser mic. Neither of them require an audio interface or anything fancy, and they're going to have pretty good sound without having to commit too much towards it. However, if you get a dynamic mic like the Samson Q2U, or in my case, a Shure SM57, you will need a little microphone stand. That way people can hear you. Dynamics mics will also require you to have a bit of mic technique, so that's something you need to get used to as well. In terms of editing software, I use Premiere Pro to edit my videos, but you can also use this program DaVinci Resolve, which is an alternative to that, and it's completely free. I know people will often be recommended like, here's an alternative to Photoshop and it's free, and it like usually kind of sucks, but this is an exception. It is amazing software. People who are like straight up professionals will use it to color grade real video. So definitely check that out. With that in mind, if you're using Sony Vegas, which I used to use, please switch to Resolve or to Premiere Pro or something. Vegas is terrible. It has so many problems to do even basic stuff. The skills are not very transferable. It's a little rant, I know, but don't use Vegas. If you're recording with a camera, I've already kind of touched on this a bit, but I would really, really strongly recommend investing in lighting before you focus on a camera itself. So for example, as I showed before, like even just minimal lighting can have a pretty big difference. So this is just the overhead light. So this is one light and a little ring light. You can see if the ring light was off, this was just the only overhead light. And then I have this little kind of fill light in the background, or practical light. But this is like a $30 ring light. Again, link in the description. And it does add like a lot. And you can kind of see it over here in the mirror. But that adds a lot. And it's like $30 Canadian. So I think it was like 20 when I bought it. But like look at the difference. And then if you add a couple extra lights, all of a sudden it starts to really fill out. So the reason why I bring that up is basically that if you are making a video and you think, oh, my visual stuff, like my camera doesn't look good, chances are upgrading your light will take you very far in making the picture better. And even if you do buy a new camera, like a really fancy $1,000 camera or whatever, you're likely still going to need good lights anyway. So that's why I'd recommend investing, in lights, because you're just going to get more from it. Last but not least, you've got the video ready, you've got the gear, it's all done, and you need to make a title and a thumbnail. So this is something that I myself am still learning, so I don't feel totally confident in sharing tips necessarily, but I know Ludwig made a whole video where he like rated YouTubers, and he gave a lot of tips. And one of the kind of quick TLDRs from that was that you want to make a thumbnail that's not too visually complex and easy to understand, as it's going to be viewed on a small screen. So it's even helpful to like zoom out when you're looking at it. You want to make the thumbnail different from the video title. So if the video is, and this is something that I actually need to go back for my old videos and fix, and I have been doing that, where like maybe the video is rest setups and on the thumbnail it says rest setups, and it should be kind of different information. As for the thumbnail itself as well, you want to make sure there's only a couple elements you're focusing on. You want, if there's going to be text on it, you want the text to be pretty big. People aren't going to really hold up their phone or their computer and like look at the small text. There's just too much visual information. So again, focus on kind of big stuff. I generally make my thumbnails in Photoshop. That's obviously, there's obviously alternatives to that too. But yeah, and then as for the title, try to come up with something interesting. Be honest with what you're doing. I don't really love clickbaity stuff that's deceptive, but I'm far from an expert, so experiment yourself. Hopefully this video was helpful. Obviously it was a bit quick. Maybe it could have been shorter, but I wanted to get out content like this a bit more often. And if this is something that you'd like to see more of, I will be doing more of this on my Patreon, and I'll be sharing those videos kind of unlisted on this channel. So please consider supporting me. And thanks for watching, guys. I will see you next time.